Good morning. Ayin Beis, volume 3. We're on page 1332. So we've explained the difference between Avir and Oir, beginning on page 1329, where Oir is Gilui, revelation. Avir is a state of concealment, but it's an environment. Avir means environment, atmosphere. Oir, Avir as in space or air, actual air. However, it's essentially like a vacuum state where you don't see any revelation. And we explained that in the spiritual realms, it's the level of the Rishimu. That Rishimu, that mysterious entity that remains after the Tzimtzum, encapsulating everything from before the Tzimtzum, but all in a concentrated, concealed state. And generally, two different aspects to the Rishimu. The Etzem Nekudus Rishimu, that's the Avir itself, which is like he called that earlier, Avir that Eina Nitfas, which means it's not graspable. The very letters, the power of the Gvul, of Koyach HaGvul, rooted in Helam Atzmi. And then there's Avir Er Yud, the Oir within the Avir, which is the levels of revelation from before the Tzimtzum, but they're in a state of concealment, like in a seed. Think of it like in a kernel, in a concentrated form. The Kav, on the other hand, is a form of is Gili Eir. The Kav is Gili Eir. This was, to get more understanding of it, I would suggest going back to page 1269, where he actually spoke about the difference between the Kav and the Shimu actually began on 1268. That Sheresh HaKelim and B'chinas HaRishimu Sheresh HaMa'akav. And that's where there are more details that the Rebbe Rashab is just referring to. And specifically the detail that we spoke about, that the Rishimu is Loi Noga B'Hamad Tzimtzum. The letters of the Rishimu, the Tzimtzum did not have impact. Now you say, 1 second, isn't it concealed? Yeah, but remember the Rishimu is the power of concealment. So it's not that the Tzimtzum had impact. That is the power of Tzimtzum and concealment, the power of Gvul. Additionally, even the Oir of Eir Ein Sof, what does not, the Tzimtzum affects that the recipients can't see it, but the letters themselves remain intact. As the Rebbe Marash explains in his Maimorim on this topic, that the letters themselves remain intact, and even they have also the power to transmit. They're just not transmitting in actuality, but nothing about them was in any way diminished, except their actual functionality, and that will emerge when the Kav activates the Rishimu. So this is material spoken back on page 1268, where he says clearly that the Shershe Oiris, which is the Kav, is rooted in the 10 hidden spheres in the level Alei Sarotzim, where God is already envisioning and allocating resources, envisioning existence. And there he talks about the Tzimtzum. The Rishimu, on the other hand, is the 10 hidden spheres, but with the energy that is the synergy that's above them, that's like the purpose within them all, as we discussed there. So if you look on page 1268 and 1269, there's a lot more information that helps us understand what we're learning now on page 1332. I'm not going to go through all of it, because you can look it up yourself, but there he spoke much about the difference between the Kav and the Rishimu. I'm saying it because here it's so brief, but there it is elaborate. And then just want to see if he brings there. He definitely brings there that the Tzimtzum didn't affect it. So therefore, the difference between Oir, that's revealed after the Tzimtzum like Kav, and the Avir, the Oir as it's encompassed in the Rishimu, even though that's the source, which means, like he said, we learned because like we said, the Eir HaKav comes from the Oir before the Tzimtzum that God is envisioning existence, the root of Mamalakalam, but it goes through the Tzimtzum and the Rishimu. So even though it comes from there, but the way it's in the Rishimu, it's in a higher qualitative state, which he called Madrega Nalus Ma'ed, like the sun within the sunlight within the sun, which is a state of ayin compared to the yesh of the kav. So from this level, for sure, we have the power to transform darkness to light. Because even the power of the Kav, Reshis HaKav, we learned before, the Yud of Chochma, rooted in the head of the Kav, has that power because it's completely beyond darkness. It's an entity that is conceived in light, and not just regular light, the highest levels of light, and undiluted form, Pnimius Abba, Pnimius Atik. So how much more so when you're talking about the Rishima, where the Tzimtzum didn't even have impact. So for sure, that has the power to transform. As I said yesterday, is this the second level of transformation or the third? Most likely it's the second level, but it's a deeper dimension to it. That there's the power of light is so strong within the Rishimu that ultimately gives the strength to transform darkness to light. And then the final line we learned, he said, the Inyan Hamshachazu, according to what we learned earlier, that this is Alei Saratzin. Earlier means page 1330, but also page 1268. That what? So based on that, this is the level of the 10 hidden spheres. So the 10 hidden spheres is the root of the Kav, but it travels through the Rishimu. So the difference between Avir and Oyer then is whether it's more intense or less intense. One is a revealed light. One is a light that's concentrated within the Rishimu, the Avir, like you said, the Yud, which is within the Avir, the Oyer within the Avir. And that is the level of the Rishimu. That's where we stopped, middle of page 1332. I mentioned yesterday a few times the Torah Eir of the Alter Rebbe. I want to just read to you the language. Let me just pull it out. The actual language of the Alter Rebbe is interesting because it's very much the basis of this discussion that, as I said, taking the Tzemach Tzedek, the Rebbe Marash, and ultimately Rebbe Rashab, it's all based on this line in Torah Eir of the Alter Rebbe Noach. I just want to read that just one line describing the Rishimu. He says like this. Let's just find it. Yeah. It's a Noach at the end of Noach. If you want the page, it's Yud Daled, which means 10D. So he says like this. Just 1 second. So he says like this. The reflection of the kav radiates in each world according commensurate to that world. The shima encompasses all the worlds, meaning it's an equalizer, and it's not measured according to each world. So the Tzemach Tzedek writes there, in some places it talks about that the kav is higher than the shima. So the Rebbe Marash comes and answers by saying that the Rishimu doesn't have the Tzimtzum, didn't affect it. That's why it encompasses everything. It's very similar to the words of the Zohar HaRekiah, where he said earlier on page 1330 that the Rishimu, Kol B'Nekudas Rishimu, everything that Kol She'ashpia Ein Sev Baruch Hu. It's not exactly that language, but in comparison to the Kav, that's how the Alter Rebbe says it. And this becomes the basis of the Rebbe Marash's explanation that the Rishim was not affected by the Tzimtzum while the Kav was. And of course, which is the basis of what we're learning here now in Ayin Beis. And I refer again to pages 1268, I should say, where and on that he discusses all this more in detail. Yeah. Okay, let's continue reading now, middle of page 1332. The line begins, Harotzen, Harizam Shachin, B'chinis Eses Sefiros Hagnuzis. Yesh Lemer, says the Rebbe Rashab. These pages can be found at ayinbeis.com if you want to follow the text. Yesh Lemer, and we can say, Shazeu K'may Shekoseh B'Mokam Acher, that this is what it says elsewhere on the Pasuk, Al Pasuk, Rishpei Eish, Shalheves Yudkei. In the actual text, it seems to be missing these two words. So on the footnote, the publisher adds that. So what does it say? Rishpei, which means
Reshofeho.
Really? I remember the Rebbe pronouncing it Rishpei. Okay, Reshofeho, which means that its sparks are the sparks of the flame of Yudkei. Reshofeho. But you say Rishpei, right? Reshofeho, Rishpei, Shalheves Yudkei?
Yeah, Rishpei. Reshofeho, Rishpei, Eish, Shalheves Yudkei.
Okay. So he says, Upirush Arizal, and that Arizal explains the Shofar, the Rishpei Eish, the Knesset Yisrael. What sparks are we referring to? We're talking about the sparks of fire of Knesset Yisrael. So briefly, Knesset Yisrael is usually the level, it literally means the community of Israel. It refers to Malchus, it refers to where the Neshamas Yisrael, where the souls of Israel gather or originate from. She's talking about basically the flames of the souls. And that's what the pasuk tells us. The sparks of flames of these souls of Knesset Yisrael. Where does this fire come from? Where do they get their fire? From a torch or a flame. A shalheves is like a powerful torch that is rooted or originates sheyotza, that comes out of Yudkei. So we know there's Yudkei, there's Vavkei. Yudkei, Vavkei is the full 4 letters, but it breaks sometimes into 2 parts, the Yudkei and the Vavkei. Here the Yudkei is the higher 2. Okay. So now he's going to connect it to what we're learning here. Umavur Sham, well, first he elaborates more, and it's explained by Mokem Acher. Where that Mokem Acher I have to look up, where it discusses elsewhere. But he says it's explained there, the Shalheves Yudkei, what is this level called, the torch of Yudkei? Hu inyan Shalheves Akshura B'Gacheles. It's referring to a flame that's bound to Gacheles is a coal. So when you look at a coal, a hot coal, and you see a flame coming out of it, the flame is not detached. It's Kshura B'Gacheles. There could be a detached flame where a person takes a flame and lights a flame from one other flame. But when you say Shalheves Kshura B'Gacheles, you're saying the flame or the torch, that's Kshura, bound with the coal. Sheyesh b'zeh beis inyanim. So he explains there in that other place that there are 2 elements to this. Hein, hashalheves shetmuna v'gnuza b'decha gacheles, and they are the 2 things: the flame that's hidden and concealed, or concealed and hidden within the coal. So when you look at a coal, it's not just you could also have a situation where you don't see a flame; it's all within the coal, or it could be outside it could be shot. It could also be flickering outside the coal, but it's also within the coal. And the second aspect is a shalheves sheyetze mechutz la'gacheles. And the second is the flame that goes outside of the coal. So like when you see hot coals, they can just be sitting there. There's a flame definitely within them. Then when you fan it, you see the flame rises and begins to, and so there's 2 aspects to the shalheves kshura b'gacheles, to a flame that's attached to the gacheles, that which is within the coal and that which is outside of the coal. And now he's going to connect it to what we just said. The Hain, what is the difference between these 2 levels? He says that's the difference between the Sefiros Hagnuzis. The hidden spheres are like the flame within the coal. The Sefiros Hagluis, and the 10 revealed spheres, which are like the spheres as they come outside of the coal. as was also explained earlier above. So let me elaborate a bit on this topic. When we say that an artist, or in this case, the cosmic artist, God, envisions existence, he envisions the art that he's going to create. And namely, the art consists of Chochma, Binah, Das, all the way through Malchus. This is called the 10 hidden spheres. Why? Because there's no art yet. You can't call them revealed. It's all within the divine energy, or what is being compared here, within the kol and of Lifnei Tzimtzum. That pre-Tzimtzum, the God is envisioning the 10 spheres, and that's called 10 hidden spheres. Once the Tzimtzum happens, and then the Kav comes, after the Tzimtzum and the Rishimu, and it begins to shape and form the structure of existence. So now the Sefiros are coming out from their hidden state in the kol, and they're now being seen and expressed and revealed outside of the kol. And that's called the 10 revealed spheres, usually refers to an Atzilus, but it could be any of the 10 revealed spheres after the Tzimtzum. So these are the difference between the hidden and the revealed. So when the artist begins to actually paint his art, it's not coming out in a vacuum, it's not coming from nowhere, it's based on what he envisioned. He already envisioned this art. So the way he envisions it is within the kol. The way it's expressed on the canvas, or in the case in creation, in existence, is the 10 revealed spheres. So those are the two levels. And
and this is kind of a Shimu even, the Sefiros of Gnuzes.
no. Let me learn on, and then I'll explain how it works. And from these two levels, Nimshach, Lifel b'neshamis Yisrael. And from these two levels is Nimshach, it extends and manifests, Nimshach, it draws down Lifel b'neshamis Yisrael to affect Knesset Yisrael, the Neshamis Yisrael, the souls of Israel. Who? So he's now going to explain the avodah of this. That through the flame that's bound and is within the gechelas, the 10 hidden spheres, from there, neshamas get the power, poyel liyas avayir sichlim. That causes a neshama to have cognitive love and reverence. Avayir sichlim, like we learned earlier, there's emotional avayir, which means more subjective. On a lower level, avayir sichlim, we learned, is on a more cognitive level, essentially the excitement in contemplating on God, it gives birth to an Ava V'yira Sichlin. Where's that passion, that Ava V'yira coming from? That fiery love and reverence of the divine? He says that's rooted in the flame that's within the Gechelas. Ushayspailis tia gnuza. One second. And this form of excitement and this form of stimulation, what type of excitement is this? It's not a visible one. It's not a palpable one and a tangible one. It's an internal one. It's like a person who is a very high level is excited about something, but it's all within. So he says this is genuza, just like the flame is hidden inside the gechelas, the 10 hidden spheres are hidden. So it's like that hidden force is bringing out this inner excitement, but vekas hanefesh belikim chayim, in the nefesh being bound and cleaving in the living God, built in nirgish klal klal, in a way that's completely not sensed and felt in a tangible way. The Metzias HaYispal is the existence of this excitement in a way that you can sense it and feel it. So we learned this about this level earlier, and I'll just sum it up. What did we learn? That there are two ways you can get excited. You can get excited in a very visible way and tangible way. A person literally, you see a palpable excitement. But then there can be an internal one that we don't see it, but it's there. The Rebbe, remember, Vav Tishrei Tov Shem Amal, when he explained the difference between the Alter Rebbe and the Mittler Rebbe. He said the Alter Rebbe, when he davened, and when he said Maimonim, he would sometimes roll on the floor. You saw the fiery passion in a very revealed way. The Mittler Rebbe, when he davened, he stood in one place, you didn't see anything. But when you look closely, I remember this is one of the few times the Rebbe actually showed it with his hands. You look closely, the Rebbe said, you look closely, you saw that in his strimal. So in those days, there's two types of strimal. Strimal is that fur hat that many Rabbeim wear, and the Alter Rebbe wore one, and Mittler Rebbe wore. So there's ones that are flat on top, and ones have like a kippah that are flat, and one that is more protruding, like a skull cap on top of the fur hat that is above, that protrudes upward. So the Rebbe made with his hands, so he had that, and people saw that from the tip of that skull cap, you could see a vapor. The Rebbe made like this. He made like this. You could see a vapor coming out, steam, from his tremendous passion within. So in other words, there's two different types of excitement. One is a concealed one. You don't see it externally. And in many ways, that's even deeper. But one is a very expressive one. So he's saying that what it says in the other book, that we're talking about the souls, where do they get their passion from? From Shalheves Yudke, which is the 10 spheres, and there's two levels in the 10 spheres, which is the 10 hidden spheres. One is how it's hidden within the coal, and from there comes this Ahava V'Yira, this passion, this fire, but it's a fire that is internal, just like the 10 hidden spheres are internal. To put it in simple English, when you see the art, the beautiful art God created, you can attach yourself to the very art and get very excited about it, like we'll soon learn, a very tangible excitement. But imagine that you are able to perceive or go dig deeper and connect to the artist as he envisioned the art, which means you're connecting to his inner consciousness. That's not revealed in the art itself. It's the 10 hidden spheres as he envisions it. It will create an excitement, but it will also be an internal one, as opposed to an external one, because it's coming from a deeper internal place. It's like when, this is often explained that sometimes when more noise is made, it means it's not as deep as when it's quiet. The deeper you connect to someone, in a way, the quieter the excitement is. Not because it's not there, but because it's not expressed. Like we learned, expression itself is defined and limited. So that's the first level of what he said. The first pu'ula in the Neshamas Yisrael. And then he goes on. And from the level of the flame that exits and emerges outward, so outside the coal, here, what is the effect of that level of light or fire, I should say? It affects b'nifolim in those that are the recipients and the ones that are being impacted. And what are we referring to? Knesset Yisrael, like he said before. The Shalheves, the Roshver Rishbei of the Knesset Yisrael. Lias bechinas ave b'hargosha lemida b'fnei atzma. This is causing a love that is felt, that is tangible and palpable, lemida b'fnei atzma, as a separate measure, as a separate entity, outside of the kol. Whereas the first one, he said, it's completely absorbed internally. And it's not murgeshes b'fnei atzma. This one is felt lemida b'fnei atzma, which most likely means that you have the midah of ava, an actual feeling of love, which is not just sichlin. This is the actual passion of an emotional called love, called ava. He says ava, but he also probably means yira. But this is a tangible one because it's coming from the second level of the shalheves, of the flame, as it's coming outside of the coal. So its effect on us is also having an outside effect. In other words, we're getting excited by the more external expression or outside expression of the divine art or the divine Sefiros in the nimshal, in the moral here. And that's the bittul the sublimation or the nullification that comes up pitam v'das. That's a rational one. It comes through a contemplation that's rational. Like we learned earlier, shezeu mebchinas habina, that comes from the level of Binah. Now, we learned this earlier as well, that a bittul that comes up pitam v'das is more tangible and more you sense it, but it's not, doesn't have that inner concealed state. He's going back to the other level, and the bittul that comes from Chochma shebenefesh, shulamayla mitam v'das hamusig. That comes higher than a rational love. In other words, it's not a love because you fell in love with God's creation, let's say, or the beauty of the design of the art, or that God is giving us life and sustaining us and giving us all the blessings. That's al pitam b'das. That's an ava that makes sense. God's good to you, so you love him for that. Then there's a love that's a deeper one that's coming from a deeper level of the Chochma shebenefesh, which is higher than logic. It's just the core connection between the soul and its father and its divine source. Like he says in Tanya, chapter 19, where he talks about this Ava Mesuteres, this deeper love, which even though he doesn't explicitly say it, it sounds like he's going back to the higher level of the Shalhev as the first one. That's what it sounds like, because unless he means that the outer, the flame outside the coal is both Binah and Chochma, I don't think so. But I may be wrong, because you could read it either way. I just want to refer back to when did he speak about Al Pitam V'das. So on the bottom of page 1320, he spoke about Avas Elam and Avar Rabba. And there he was talking about the first level of transforming the sweet, the bitter to sweet. Let me just, that the Ava Al Pitam V'das is the primary way to refine the animal soul, but it doesn't create a fundamental change in the personality of the animal soul. Because it's Pnimi, and it goes inward. And then there's a higher level, Shalamayla Mitam B'das, that does create a transformation. I don't know if it's relevant to our discussion. I'm just pointing it out. Okay. We still have to bring it back to understand how it fits in with what we've been learning about Oir and Avir, the Kav and the Rishimu, but let's be patient for that. And now he says like this, V'yesh leimer, shezel b'chinas Ahava B'Taanugim, that this higher level, that's L'mayla Mitam V'das, is the level of Ahava B'Taanugim, which we learned about much earlier. That was the Tzadi Gomur, that transforms the darkness to light, the bitter to sweet, the animal soul. It's completely transformed, like we learned in chapter 9 in Tanya. Shehu b'hakeches primim v'atzmim shebenefesh. That's in the keches primim, the inner faculties and core faculties in nefesh. Okay, clearly. So this is the higher level. And just as it originates from the 10 hidden spheres, Amshachah through this is we're drawing down from the 10 hidden spheres that are hidden and concealed in Ein Sof. Ayam Mashin is bar le'il being Eish Yud ve'Eish Hey, and delve into what we learned earlier about Eish Yud and Eish Hey. So Zob Chinas Er v'Cheshach. So most likely he's talking about these two levels, that Eish Yud would be the levels of Oir and Cheshach. Yeah, that was discussed quite a while back. I have to look it up. But it seems like he's paralleling that. He's associating that with the two levels we're discussing here. And then finally he says, that through Ahava B'Taanugim, in the second level of sweetening the Gvura, the negative, the evil, the animal soul gets transformed and becomes literally good, but through a force outside of it. Now, even though there's a new paragraph, it's clearly that the Rebbe Rashab did not finish the topic he spoke about yet. So we have to learn more to understand the whole context here. Let me sum up so far what we've learned. I'll stop for questions, and then we'll go on because he has not tied it all up. I would probably even suggest that the Inyan Amshach Azul Fi Mashin Isbral is the level of Sefiros Agnuzis should probably be the new paragraph. But regardless, this is the way it was published. So here's what he said so far. That there's Avir and Oir. There's the Oir that's revealed, that's the Kav. And there's a Yud in there, the Yud of Chochma, but that's a revealed state. But it's a revelation that is moved from any darkness, and that's why it has the power to transform like Eitz HaChaim, like Torah Oir, darkness to light. Then there's a higher level, how that Oir originates in the Rishimu, which the Rishimu itself is a capsule of the Oir of the 10 hidden spheres before the Tzimtzum. But before the Tzimtzum, it was all submerged and completely dissolved or absorbed within the Bli Gvul of Eid Ein Sof, and it was all about Bli Gvul. Within that, God envisioned the infinite possibilities of all that infinite energy. Alei Sarotzen arose in his desire that he wants to have 10 spheres, but it's still in a state before the Tzimtzum called hidden spheres. The Tzimtzum then comes and conceals the Bli Gvul, and the Sefiros Agnuzis now can begin to emerge. So in the Rishimu, they're in a form of like the light within the sun, in a state of Ayin. So qualitatively, it's a higher state. In the Kav, they will begin to take on revelation. They'll begin to be revealed, and the Kav will create these, will shape and ultimately reveal these spheres, what we call Sefiros Hagluyos. So these two levels, that's what it sounds to me like. How the Sefiros Agnuzis from before the Tzimtzum are in the Rishimu is like the flame within the coal, and the way they're revealed in the Kav, and then ultimately in Ishtalshalus, in all existence, is the flame outside of the coal. And the difference is the impact they have on the Shamas Yisrael. One impacts, so the Rishimu is offering something very powerful. It's allowing an neshama to be able to connect to the divine in a very, very powerful and intense way, but it's not revealed. And the shalheves, the flame, rishveha, rishpei, shalheves yudke, the flame that's outside of the gecheles, like the kav, that is the Sefiros Hagluyos, and that brings out the Ahava V'Yira that he says al pitam v'das, that is revealed. But based on this, the higher level, the hidden one, is Ahava B'Taanugim, and that we learned earlier is the power to transform darkness to light. So even though he did say that the Kav and the Chochma, Oir HaChochma, has the power to do that, but even more so is the Avir, is the Oir, as the Yud is encompassed in the Avir in the Rishimu. So both have the power to transform. It's just the Rishimu, it's a deeper power. But this piece also has the Ahava B'Taanugim seems to be more associated with the energy, with the Avir, with the Oir as it is concealed within the Rishimu. Now, he doesn't explicitly spell out how these 10 hidden spheres are inside the Rishimu, but he does say that the Rishimu is the Koyach HaGvul, but not just the Koyach HaGvul, it also has the Oir that is meant to reveal to another, the Oir of Alei Sarotzen. He said that clearly on 2 pages back. He said that in the Nekudas Rishimu is included the Oir that God envisions existence, the Oir Hashayach El Azulas. I'm reading on page 1330. He says, but Nekudas Rishimu Nichlo Beza Madregas. Both levels. The Oir as it's being envisioned for existence, which is the 10 hidden spheres, and the Oir that is shining to himself. So clearly the Rishimu has that within it. And now he explained the 2 stages of how the 2 levels or stages that this goes through. That's my understanding of what he said here. So essentially, the flame within the coal is an example for the oir as it's concealed within the sun or within the source of the reshima within that seed. Okay. The only thing that's still not 100% clear here, among other things, is the level of Chochma. Before he spoke about Chochma is the Yud that is like in the Kav, the revelation. Now he mentioned Chochma is the L'mayla Mitam V'das HaMusig, the level of Ahava B'Taanugim. So I guess there's a Chochma that's concealed within the 10 hidden spheres, within the Rishimu, and there's a Chochma that's revealed in the Sefiros HaGluyos. Yeah, so Chochma is the Sefiros Chochma Gnuza, hidden Chochma within the 10 hidden spheres, and Chochma that's revealed in the revealed spheres. He doesn't say it explicitly, but that's how it seems to be the pshat here. Okay, let me stop if anybody wants to ask anything.
I'm not so clear about the spheres and the Gnuzas. Are they before the Tzimtzum? Are they part of the Rishimu?
I think I just explained it. The artist, which in this case is God, is envisioning before the Tzimtzum, he envisions existence. It's called Shir Atzme B'Keach. The words used here, Goliv Galifu B'Tehiri Elah, B'Reishu Menusa Demalka. When it was Aleis HaRotzen, when the desire arose in God's infinite divine light before the Tzimtzum, that he wants to have existence. So there's stages. Then comes a stage where he actually envisions, just like a person envisions the art that he's going to create. That's the 10 hidden spheres. But they're completely submerged. And like we learned in volume 1 at length, they're not actual spheres. It's all within God's so-called imagination or God's energy. Then comes a tzimtzum that conceals the infinite light. So the Sefiros HaGnuzos can begin to emerge. So the sense of the Rishimu is a leftover of everything that was there before the tzimtzum. But it's in a concealed, concentrated form, so you can't see it. That includes the 10 hidden spheres, which is the level of Aleis HaRotzen, which is the level of Hashayach Lezulas, the energy that's now concealed in the Rishimu. And that is the root of the Kav, because the Kav is coming from that place. The Kav, the Sherish of the Kav, is the of the Sefiros HaGnuzos, which is the energy that's going to define existence. That's why it's a Kav. But the way it's in the Kav, it's like the flame outside the coal, and the way it's in the Rishimu is like the flame within the coal, which is really also, some places in Chassidus, he talks about the flame within the coal before the Tzimtzum. Here it seems like he's talking about the Rishimu, which is a step below after the Tzimtzum, but the same idea. It's concealed within the Rishimu, because the Rishimu is not a revealed state. It's a hidden state. If you look on page 1268, I'll just read a few words there. That's why I keep referring to it. If you really want to understand, you have to go back there. So he says like this there. He says that, I'm reading in the middle of the page, 1268. Ubepratis yuvan inyan shayin is bar leil the sharshe ha'eris hey ein self shalif in that tzimtzum vein ha'esos Sefiros HaGnuzos. The root of the eris after the tzimtzum and that come into the kav are rooted in the 10 hidden spheres before the tzimtzum. B'chinas aleis harotzen. When his boy sham, the sham einam when his boy, the sham einam b'chinas mitzias nikeres. But there, the 10 hidden spheres are not a visible and not a tangible and discernible entity. They're completely interwoven or isarvus, mixed in, absorbed, dissolved, and united with the Ein Sof before the Tzimtzum. And additionally, they have the Eira Elal Kulam. And that level, they also have the synergy that comes from all the letters and all those Sefiros together. There's a higher energy within them. By Idei HaTzimtzum, through the Tzimtzum, Nistali B'chinas Eira Elal Kulam, the energy that encompasses them all. Like when a person envisions a home or art, so there's a certain intent, there's a certain level of unity in that envisioning. But in order to create the art, you have to conceal that vision. So the energy is concealed. The gamma air, the spheres, nismayat harba, and also the energy within the 10 actual spheres is also very much diminished. Ubo ba'kav b'chinas spheres pratis. And after the tzimtzum, it's going to come into the kav in specific spheres, details, Chochma, Binah. Before the tzimtzum, all those details are all part of one larger unity. So based on this, the kav comes after the siluk, the removal and the diminishing of the energy that we just spoke about. And I'll give an example for it. It'll help with this example. The example goes like this. When the teacher understands an idea well, why does he have to be mitzamtzum, concealed? Because the way he understands it is not just quantitatively, qualitatively a different level. He has the whole picture in his mind. Let's talk about a teacher. A brilliant teacher who's studying Chassidus or studying an Inyan for many years. So he has the whole picture in his mind. If he were to reveal the picture there, the student would not be able to receive it. So he has to eliminate, or has to conceal the big picture. And even the details of the picture, he has to diminish and then begin to spoon feed the student, Aleph, Beis, Gimel. For example, it says, the Frierdiker Rebbe says, the Aleph of the 10 Commandments, Anochi, the letter Aleph includes the whole word Anochi. Anochi includes the whole first of the 10 Commandments, which includes all the 10 Commandments, which includes the entire Torah. So when you teach a child Aleph Beis, you just teach them the letter Aleph. Kometz Aleph, letter Aleph. The child is only getting one little piece, but within it lies all the wisdom of the whole Torah is all in that Aleph. The teacher had to conceal all of that, both the synergetic element that unites all the ideas, and also the actual specific ideas diminish it. And that's where the Kav is now revealing step by step, piece by piece. So the Kav is now the transmission that's coming from the Sefiros Agnuzis. But now what's the role of the Rishimu? So he goes on and says, Varishimu, who mebchinas hagilui da Sefiros Agnuzis, u'k'mosheher behem ha'era el al kulam. The Rishimu is a concealed state, but the Rishimu is not revealing anything. So the Rishimu can contain in a capsule form, in a concentrated form, all that energy, like we discussed. It's not just that it remains in the mind of the teacher. The teacher actually put it into a time capsule, so to speak. That's called the Rishimu. And it's all there. And he goes on to explain how the Rishimu is even deeper, even has the Primus Ha'er. And the Etzem Ha'er, like we learned here, just 2 pages back. The deepest levels of Ha'er is all in the Rishimu. So the Kav is focusing on revealing step by step. And the Rishimu contains all the potential and the potency that will be revealed. And as the student grows, and through our Avodah, we'll be drawing down more and more of it. But now he explained that the 2 states of the Shalheves, of the flame concealed within the coal, is like the Sefiros Agnuzis. And here specifically, as it transfers into the Rishimu, and the revealed part of the flame of the coal is the Sefiros Agluyas, which connects to the Kav. So though he didn't specifically say Kav and Rishimu, I'm just connecting it because it literally follows what we learned before. Here, right now, he's using the language hidden spheres and revealed spheres, but I believe he's going to connect it all on the next page. And both of these levels have the power to transform darkness because they're both entities that were born and conceived in light. That is completely beyond darkness, like he said before. But the Rishimu is deeper because the Rishimu doesn't have any effect of the Tzimtzum, like he said. And that's why Bevadai, the words where they use, Bevadai hu shenasi saptus acheshech le'er. Okay. So I hope that helped.
So if you have the Tzimtzum, you need the Rishimu because the Tzimtzum is completely metallic, covering. So you need the Rishimu that is giving you...
Well, the language of the Ramaz and Haggah, it says, Loi lav dafke chol l'mokem pani mamish, Ki'im shenisha reshimu. Correct. That there is something. Basically, without the reshimu, we would not have a logical way of understanding how pre-tzimtzum consciousness can get to us. Because at the end of the day, the tzimtzum affects the kav, and as much as the kav is powerful light, but it's still a light that was diminished and affected by the tzimtzum. The reshimu is, so to speak, as I said a number of times, it's a snapshot, it's a capsule, a fossil of pre-tzimtzum reality and consciousness in the post-tzimtzum world. However, it's concealed. It's a koyach nelam, as we're going to learn soon, the third level of transformation. Okay. Any other questions so far, what we learned?
So the Helem Ha'atzmi is coming before the Yud Sefiros HaGnuzos, not the Reshimu, the Helem Ha'atzmi.
Helem Ha'atzmi is the root of the koyach hagvul that he said before. Helem Ha'atzmi is the track of God concealing, power to conceal, as opposed to Oyer is power to reveal.
So that
So it's
means
in the highest
that
levels, yeah.
even higher than Yud Sefiros HaGnuzos. I'm not clear a little bit about it.
Yud Sefiros HaGnuzos is Alei Saratzen. There's a level Koydem Alei Saratzen and Koydem Alei Saratzen. We learned in the last 2 pages that there's many levels. Sefiros HaGnuzos is the lowest level before the Tzimtzum. So there are many levels above it. The levels of Oyer that are higher than Sefiros HaGnuzos. Remember, the artist has infinite possibilities. Sefiros HaGnuzos is one of infinite possibilities. So right away, that's lower. It's lower than Oyer. Sefiros HaGnuzos is Eir Legalis L'Zulose, Alei Saratzen. There's an Eir Legalis L'Atzmei. That's higher than the 10 hidden spheres. And then there's Etzem Oyer. That's higher than Gilui altogether. But it's the Makar of Gilui. So that's where Sefiros HaGnuzos is placed. It's the lowest level of the before the Tzimtzum, where Bereishur Manusa D'Maka Golav Galifu B'Tihirei Law. That's where the Sefiros HaGnuzos take place. Remember, we spoke about a person has be'etzem a will to have a home. He may not even be aware of it. That's not the Sefiros HaGnuzos. Sefiros HaGnuzos is already concealed within him, but he's already envisioning it.
So when we're saying that
hold on. I'll be happy to take your question. Let me ask if anybody else has questions.
Just to finalize this idea.
Yeah, but there are other people in this class. I want to respect them as well.
Simon, if you don't mind, one question, because just give me.
It's not me. There's a whole class here. It's not just me. It's not
just
about
tell me what is the oil. We said that in the Reshimu, this is the oil. The oil is the Yud Sefiros HaGnuzos.
I don't know what you mean by oil here. There's a lot of levels of oil. Which oil?
Avir and oil Yud, Avir.
So why don't you go back and read on page 1329? He says there's Avir v'Eir. Avir is Eir Yud. He says, and Avir Eir is b'chinas Gili, v'Avir b'chinas Helem, which is the level of the Reshimu, and Eir is the level of Gili, which is the level of the Kav.
But oil is also in Reshimu, he said. So this is the Yud Sefiros HaGnuzos.
I'm not going to go over that. That you have to learn again. That's what we've been learning the last few pages, what that means. What means the oil within the Reshimu, which is higher than the oil outside? That's the whole paragraph we just learned. So that I suggest either read it again or listen to the class again.
Is the oil in the Reshimu called Soveh or Makiv?
He doesn't use those words.
I know.
He doesn't use the word Seva V'Makiv. He simply uses the word concealed. He doesn't use that word, Seva V'Makiv. So I wouldn't use that word. What he used earlier is that the Oyer, there's a root of Seva before the Tzimtzum, and there's a root of Mamala before the Tzimtzum, and all those roots are in the Reshimu. So yes, the Reshimu contains all the types of energy there are, include the immanent energy and the transcendent energy. So in that sense, the Reshimu has both, if that's what you're asking me. But Reshimu is not exclusively one or the other.
I was asking specifically how it affects us. It's not Mamala. It doesn't affect us, at least that I know, Mamala, but it comes. I thought maybe it affect us in a way you don't realize. Namakiv, that's all.
Well, since he doesn't use the word makif, I won't use the word makif. He uses the word that's not nirgash. An ava, like he says, that the spilus is gnuza, it's concealed in his, like I explained before, a person is so absorbed in something, they can't even get, you don't see any palpable excitement on the outside. It's all in within. That's the way he explains it. Are there any other questions? Anyway, this is dense material. I'm not suggesting it's easy to understand the first time. You have to learn it quite a few times before you're going to get it. I can tell you that right now. I would strongly advise reading it again, seeing what you understand, what you don't understand. You can listen to the class again. It takes time. You have to go over it again and again and again to really fully understand it. I just don't have any shortcuts. What should I tell you? So I'm going to stop here at the end of this paragraph. And the end of the paragraph at the bottom of page